All right, topic 7, lesson 5, challenges facing Northern Eurasia. So environmental problems, ethnic conflict, and troubled governments are challenges in many of the Northern Eurasian countries today that have stemmed from the past. Many parts of Northern Eurasia face serious environmental problems. Air quality, water quality, and ground pollution are very huge environmental issues for the region and for their people. Back during the 1950s and 60s, scientists started to introduce new disease-resistant crops and new technologies to make it easier to grow things to parts of the world where it was they were facing big food shortages. So it was great for the short term of feeding the people, but long term it caused other problems. So this time period where there was an increase in agricultural production through improved technology is called the Green Revolution. So it brought about a huge dramatic increase in farm output, which is a good thing. But because of the heavy use of pesticides and irrigation issues, it caused some environmental impacts as well. So one outcome of the Green Revolution was the dramatic shrinkage of the Aral Sea, ARALC. It at one time was a huge saltwater lake in Central Asia. So you don't use the salt water to water the crops, but the rivers that fed that sea were used and made it dry up a lot quicker. So to water the crops, one of the biggest crops was cotton at the time. The government was diverting water from the Syr Darya, I'm probably saying that wrong, it's spelled S-Y-R, then D-A-R-Y-A, and the Amu Darya rivers, and that's spelled A-M-U-D-A-R-Y-A. So those two rivers are the main source of water for the Aral Sea. And so with less water coming in, that sea started to shrink over time, and it gradually pretty much evaporated. Also, heavy pollution is a problem in a lot of Russia. Pollution increased big time with Joseph Stalin's attempt to industrialize the Soviet Union, and it's continued to present day times, mostly due to lack of the government trying to step in and deal with the problem. And not really dedicating resources to addressing it. Like in the United States, we've got laws against that. And in Russia, they don't put the money and the laws towards enforcing issues that would help clear up the pollution. Political challenges are a big issue also. So though the former Soviet republics achieved their independence, they've still continued to have troubles establishing a fair and just government. It depended on who was there and who was trying to take over at the time. So when the Soviet Union collapsed, the countries in the region were left to their own, basically to figure out how things were going to happen. And a lot of times, old Soviet leaders were taken over and come into power. So the leaders of the newly independent countries wrote new constitutions and laws that seemed to protect the people's rights. They seemed to protect, though. Yet many of these leaders acted, they didn't really promote democracy. They actually limited democracy, and the rights of the people were not protected. The government of Turkmenistan was one of the most repressive governments, keeps strict control over its citizens and economies. The press can't even criticize the president, so that's just one example of how strict they are. Kyrgyzstan became a democracy, and that's spelled K-Y-R-G-Y-Z-S-T-A-N, Kyrgyzstan. So they became a democracy, but they still struggled to establish a good, strong, stable government. In some countries, protests have actually brought around greater democracies, and Kyrgyzstan is an example of that. People having protests have led to them having a better democracy. But still, the political systems of most of the countries are not open and they're not democratic. Ethnic conflict is a serious issue in the Caucasus and Central Asia. There are many, many different ethnic groups living side by side in the region, and the minority groups are oftentimes treated very unfairly. So there's a lot of different conflict going on all over that part of the world. All right, that's it for topic 5. End of the chapter.